Today we dive into the 5 biggest issues that Ratcliffe must face at Manchester United, and we will be ranking them from least to most significant. So Zach, for you, what is Ratcliffe's least significant issue at Manchester United?
So for me, it is the manager. Ten Hag is not the biggest problem here by any means. At Ajax, we saw him play a clear brand of football. They had a clear identity there. It's possession-based football. He's shown that he could work with the players there. The whole team around him, he trusted, and that's very key. I think if United had a team that he could trust around him in terms of recruitment staff, coaching, physios, and if he could trust the players, I think we'll see Ten Hag perform a lot better. Because at United at the moment, we don't know if it's counter-attacking, we don't know if it's possession-based. Whereas, like I said, at Ajax, there was a clear identity and a clear style of play. And I think moving forward, United have to establish that to become a better team and to obviously eventually win trophies, which for a club of their size, they really need to start doing soon.
Yeah, and I don't think Ten Hag is obviously high on my list. He's certainly low down on my list. He's not number 5, but he's definitely not a priority. He's definitely not the main culprit for United's downfall at the moment. For me, at number 5, I've gone for signing players because I think when you look at the transfer recruitment that United have done, it has been shocking. The likes of Paul Pogba, the likes of more recently Anthony, their transfer recruitment is shocking. You know, their transfer team, or recruitment team, sorry, is terrible.
Lukaku.
Exactly, Lukaku. We've seen those shocking
Maguire,
signings.
There's
loads of them.
Yeah.
And when you look at the recent signings United have done, that it's very evident that they're relying on the manager's word, which is just not what you should be doing. So the last thing they should be doing is rushing around for signings when you don't have a plan to put in place. Yeah. And the reason I've gone for, we might as well move on to number 4 now, I've gone for Ten Hag at number 4, because I don't think, again, like I said, he's the main culprit for United's downfall. But Ten Hag is partially to blame for United's most recent sort of poor performances. When you look at the style of play they don't really have one, like Zac was mentioned earlier. But the reason I do put him low down the list is because where you do look at when he has had success at the likes of Ajax, they've had a team put in place. They've had a head of recruitment. They're really strong in recruitment. They've got leaders in every department that you can have at a football club. United are far from that, and I think if you put Ten Hag in sort of a fresh new Manchester United, we could see him pick up results, because that's where you could get rid of players, cut the squad, bring the players that the transfer recruitment can bring in, where it's not relying on him to bring in transfers, because as we've seen, that's not going down well. So if you rely on the sort of the recruitment department to bring in players for you and your style that Ten Hag wants to build, because I'm sure he wants to play that Ajax kind of style at Manchester United. I'm sure he wants to sort of play similar to that anyway, at least. So when you do have a sort of a department there for recruitment, that's when you can properly measure Ten Hag, because then he's getting players suited for his system, and then that's when you can sort of put blame on him if he's not getting results.
If you look at Klopp and Guardiola at City and Liverpool, they have a clear structure around them, and although they're great managers, exceptional managers in fact, because they have that clear structure around them, because they have people who they trust, they're allowed to perform to that high level, and they don't feel as vulnerable in certain situations.
Exactly. When Klopp actually didn't really want Mohamed Salah in the first place, wasn't it?
Exactly.
It was who was it?
It was Michael Edwards.
Michael Edwards. That's top
Klopp
man.
wanted Julian Brandt, and Michael Edwards said no. Get Salah. Klopp was a bit sort of sceptical because obviously he underperformed at Chelsea. He trusted Michael Edwards. Michael Edwards said, "Yep, Salah's the right man for the job." Signed him, obviously. Exactly. Look what happened.
And that's what we need for someone like Ten Hag. Ten Hag brings in someone like Anthony. He's probably adamant that Anthony would work. Same with, I'm not saying he's a flop, but same with someone like Martinez. These are players that he knows.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's players out there that he thinks, oh, they'll definitely work. But then you've probably got someone who's probably got more of a speciality in transfers, which is what United need to bring in. If you've got a speciality in their transfers, then that's when you can sort of that's when Ten Hag can sort of rely on his transfer department, his team, and that's when you can sort of fully fully judge him on United results, because then he has a pure setup around him. It's not just him alone trying to push United to sort of the top, because he can't do it alone, and we've seen that right now. So I've already given away my number 4, which is Erik Ten Hag. But Zach, who is at your number 4 place?
So my number 4 is new signings, because I do think it's slightly more of an issue that they need to address. Because, like I said, they don't need to touch the manager. Everything else can be fixed around him. Yeah. But with new signings, yes, the recruitment team isn't there. But I think if you do get lucky with a signing, I know it's very rare, but like they did with Bruno Fernandes, who's obviously a quality player despite all of his other issues.
He's a quality player, to be fair, yeah.
If they do sign a player who's maybe got lots of experience, maybe a leader, or someone who's maybe played in a sort of similar system to Ten Hag's before, and they just got, not lucky, but they got a really good player in that they didn't expect, that could almost change their fortune somewhat, a bit like how Casemiro came in last season, and although he hasn't completely revolutionised,
he changed the midfield last year,
he can change the midfield, and he was arguably their best player last year. So a player like that, who in the long run and in the long term isn't going to be super effective, but in the short term can sort of fix and eradicate some of their issues and maybe help United win something, because obviously their fans at the moment, they're just crying out for any form of decent silverware. So I think signings is slightly more of an issue than Erik ten Hag. Erik ten Hag should not be touched, and I think signing should be higher up on the agenda for Jim Ratcliffe moving forward. So, Harv, for you, what have you ranked at number 3?
At number 3, I've gone for sell players.
Okay.
Because I think that squad really desperately needs to be cut, and I've put it over transfers in because we have seen them constantly buy transfers, like I said earlier, that are flops, and that squad needs to be cut. You've got so many deadwood players in there.
I agree.
You've got players that shouldn't be in there at all, let's be real. A lot of players that don't care.
Johnny Evans.
Martial. I mean, how's Johnny Evans at 35, 36 years old? The guy's closer to 40 years old than he is 30. He's just been relegated to Leicester. They don't even think he's good enough, and yet he joins Manchester United and becomes one of their starting centre-backs.
Shows you their problems, doesn't it?
Exactly. It says everything you need to know. That squad needs to be cut. Harry Maguire, Johnny Evans, Martial, just to name a few. They need to go. McTominay for me as well, not good enough. Dalot, again, listen, he's a great player, but for me, he's just not good enough if you want to be competing at the top. He's fairly average. He's not good at all.
He'd be a good backup, but not as a regular starter.
He's alright as a backup, yeah, but you just look at the likes of Man City and even Liverpool and even Arsenal. They've got so much better depth in all those positions than United, and players like Dalot, Wan-Bissaka as well, again, shocks me that he's still at the club because he is a completely opposite defender that Ten Hag would want.
Yeah.
Really good defensively, but awful going forward, let's be real. And the fact that Ten Hag has arguably wanted to keep him, because by the looks of it he does, otherwise I feel like he would be out the door.
Shows they're scared of their problems, doesn't
exactly.
it?
And they can't get rid of these players because of the high wages they're on, so they need desperately to get rid of these players. Listen, they're going to have to take a massive cut. They're going to have to be prepared to lose a lot of money. I know they spent a lot on Maguire. They spent a fair bit on Martial.
They just need a complete refresh and a reset.
Exactly. These players are on big wages. They've been signed for big money, but they got to go because they're simply not good enough. They're eating into their wage bill. And then you need to get rid of these players that don't care. The older players that don't care. Or not don't care, but like a lot of them definitely ain't good enough. And then you need to sort of freshen it up with younger players, which I'll obviously explain later on when I talk about a possible hire director of football. And Zach, what issue have you ranked at number 3?
So at number 3, I've gone with club redevelopment. So the stadium, the training facilities, everything
Youth
behind
academy.
the scenes. Yeah, the youth academy, everything behind the scenes and everything that you see on telly and when you go to the ground needs to be redeveloped.
Agreed.
Because, for example, a lot of top coaching staff, a lot of top physios, they will want to work with the top facilities at the top clubs. And if United's facilities are falling well below that, I know the physios will still go there because United, they have a big brand and image.
Yeah,
but when places like Manchester City's training ground and facilities and Liverpool with their new training centre, which they developed and built recently, I think they almost would favour going there because if they're a top physio or a top coach or a top youth coach, they're going to have a lot of options on the table.
Yeah.
And they would probably favour going to teams where they have better facilities. So I think they really needed to redevelop this. Yes, the stadium less so because although it's starting to look a bit decrepit and a bit fallen down, it still carries that same sort of ethos and aura that obviously Old Trafford always has done. But for me, they have to address those issues behind the scenes if they want to develop players and develop their youth academy and just become a better, well-run club. And that's why club redevelopments, for me, is the third most important issue for Jim Ratcliffe.
And that leads me perfectly on to my number 2, which is club redevelopments. Zach obviously touched on it earlier. I don't really need to expand much more. It's massively needed for Manchester United. When you look at that stadium, they've got leaks coming through the ground. The training facilities are... Ronaldo said it in his interview with Piers Morgan. He went and said the fact that it's not changed since he was first there. He was first there when he was at Manchester United as a kid.
It's over a decade ago.
He's left, went to Real Madrid, Juventus, not been there for over a decade, comes back and it's not changed one bit. He said not a thing has changed. He says the same people there, the same sort of facilities there, and nothing's changed about it, which shows to you that how
stuck in the past, aren't they?
Exactly. And you need to be up to date. I mean, when you got like the likes of Tottenham, my club, and you got the likes of Liverpool, City, Arsenal, and there's loads of other clubs that I can probably mention. Leicester, by the way. Leicester's training ground is very, very good from what I've heard. The facilities there are top notch.
Aston Villa's quite good as well.
Aston Villa's,
Bournemouth, I think, got good facilities, all better than United. And United's supposed to be the biggest club in England.
Exactly, especially with someone like Leicester. I mean, imagine a Championship club having a better facility than Manchester United. It shows the levels that they're on, and obviously the Glazers haven't done a great job of that at all. So Zach led me on to my number 2 perfectly, but Zach, let's now hear your number 2.
So my number 2 is sell players. They need to axe so many players out the squad, as Harvey mentioned. I'm not going to go into all of them, but there are far too many players who have a poor mentality and far too many players who have poor ability. And in some cases, there's players who have both. Yeah. Someone like Martial, he has the ability there. We've seen it, but we've only seen it in patches. His mentality is not there to make him a top-level striker for a top team like United, which they aim to be.
For sure.
So there's far too many players that need to get rid of. And yes, you could blame it on coach and staff, and are they getting the best best out of players and managers, but we've seen so many managers come and go, and that same crop of players remain, and they just need to axe them all. Yes, like Harvey said, they're going to take cuts and losses, but they're going to have to do that moving forward. And also it affects new players coming in. If you're a new player coming in and you feel good about yourself coming to a club like Manchester United due to the size of the club, you would often get dragged down, and we've seen it by the players within the club. You can't have players within the club who are going to drag down others. You look at Liverpool and look at City. When they recruit a player, it's almost like they sort of getting indulged and almost immersed in the ethos of the club. Like, look at Szoboszlai for Liverpool. He's signed and he looks like he's been playing in the club team for years. And that's obviously thanks to many reasons, but having players like Van Dijk, Salah, Trent, who just almost embody what the club's about, is absolutely key. And at United, there are very few, if any, players who embody what Man United want to be moving forward. So that's why selling players is very key, and Jim Ratcliffe needs to address this immediately.
I think Zac actually brings up a good point about Manchester United's current issues in terms of they rely on the sort of individual quality. We saw that in the game against Tottenham. The only reason they got a draw out of that was because of that flash of quality, the flash of brilliance that the likes of Rashford and Højlund have. I know they don't maybe show it every game, but they do show it at times, and that's what gets them out of trouble, because if they didn't have that, they'd be in a much worse situation. And like Zac just mentioned, I think the system now is actually very more important than the players you bring in terms of the quality. When you look at the players that top clubs bring in, City and Liverpool, they might not bring in the household names in. I know City bring the likes of Haaland and Grealish, but in terms of the players that actually do make the most impact, they're not really household names. They're not big names.
Galactico superstars.
Exactly, and that's what Manchester United's issue has been in the past. And I think United rely too much on individual quality, and we see that don't really get them anywhere anymore, because obviously Rashford and Højlund, they can bring you out of like bad moments at times, but they can't do it all the time.
Having a good team, a solid team, is far better than having a poor team with a few star individuals.
Exactly.
And United over the years, with Pogba when he's showing flashes of brilliance, Fernandes, Rashford, Ibrahimovic when he was there, these are all players who come up with moments of brilliance, like you've just mentioned. But in terms of someone like Brighton, who for years, and we've seen, play regularly and consistently at the top level, that's due to a good squad and good foundation.
Aston Villa's the same as well. And the thing is as well, like, football's just changed. The way Eric Ten Hag manages, you've seen it as well with the way he treats players, the way he like discards Sancho out of the team. Yeah, I think I've heard that he's discarded Martial out of the team because he's been too injury prone. And the reason he does it is because he's sort of more, the way he acts is more of an old-fashioned manager. And when you look at sort of the moments United have, it's what gets Ten Hag out of trouble. The way they play is sort of give it to Rashford or Højlund, or give it mainly to Rashford, maybe Bruno Fernandes. A lot of the times I've seen United just give it to Fernandes, long ball over, hope Rashford gets it, they might score, they might not. And I've seen that against Tottenham. That was only tactic, and it did work at times, but nowhere near enough. Exactly, nowhere near enough for me. It's not going to get you anywhere by playing long balls over to Rashford from Fernandes. But that's because Ten Hag relies on individual quality. Football 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's not actually that bad to do that. The tactic back then, it probably would have worked. Because
now it's system-based, isn't it?
Now football is so much more based on the system because of Pep Guardiola, the way he's transformed football. You look at the Klopp teams, you look at Pep's teams, you look at Arteta's, Arsenal, even Tottenham under Postecoglou, Aston Villa under Brighton under De Zerbi. There's countless clubs I can name. It's all because of the system. It's nothing to do with the individual quality of players. Yes, now and then they will have that. I know, like the likes of City and Liverpool, because they have big names, big players. But it's always to do with the system, and United just don't have a system there. And I think that's what Zac brought up a good point there.
And ultimately, to create a good style of play and to have a good functioning, well-solid team, you have to axe a lot of the players that are already there. And United have far too many of those, don't they?
Of course, absolutely. I mean, United have got a bunch of absolute stinkers at the club in terms of their mentality. And it's been like that for ages. Since post-Fergie, it's just been like that. And it's just constant bad mentality issues. And the thing is as well, like, we have seen, the likes of Liverpool, right, last summer, discarded a load of players. Like, they got rid of a load of sort of more older players. I'm not saying they had bad mentality, but they did get rid of a lot of players and brought in a fresh midfield, an entire new midfield. Klopp's done. Same with Tottenham in a way. We've actually got an entire new midfield. United have the ability to get rid of all these players and bring in fresh, young, hungry players. And we've seen the world of difference it makes. Like, this could... Listen, you've got to give Ten Hag or you've got to give Ratcliffe time. I'm not saying it be done just like that. But there is potential if United, or if Ratcliffe can get it right at United, that they can instantly, I'm not saying title challengers straight away, but they can
change their fortunes. Yeah,
they can certainly be right back up there, because we've seen Liverpool do it, we've seen Tottenham do it, the way they just completely changed their entire midfield, and they're already just straight back up. You know, from an awful season, not even in the top four, both clubs, straight back up, Liverpool challenge for the title, Tottenham back in the top four race. So we've seen that, like Zac said, it can change fortunes. So it's absolutely potential there for United to become successful under Ratcliffe if they get this right and they axe all these bad players out of the club and bring in fresh, hungry players.
And ultimately, that leads on to both our number ones. I think you already know recruitment.
It's obvious now.
To axe all of these players, you've got to bring the right ones. Yes, I know, like we said, it's pivotal that they get rid of all these players who are not good enough to play for the club. But there's no point getting rid of them if you're not going to bring in quality replacements. And they have to. And to do that, you have to have a good sporting director. Look at Michael Edwards at Liverpool for years. He was so instrumental in signing players like Mohamed Salah. He was so instrumental in signing so many players for Liverpool at the right price. They weren't overspending. And Liverpool have always been, if they need a player, they'll spend not whatever it takes, but they'll spend a lot of their money. But they won't just splash a load of money on him or splash a load of money on him because they don't have the finances to do so. And yes, United do have a bigger budget than Liverpool, but if they followed the same approach that Liverpool had when they had Michael Edwards and obviously FSG as the owners, they would probably be in a lot better predicament because a lot of people link it to Klopp in terms of Liverpool's smart recruitment. And yes, he is the pivotal figure, but he couldn't have done what he did for so many years without Michael Edwards. And then also, if you look at Man City, they have a massive budget, probably bigger than United, but they don't mess up signings. Look at Liverpool and City. How many signings that come in mess up? How many signings of them how many of their signings are failures? Very few. More often than not, they succeed and they go on to win things for the clubs. Whereas at United, 90% of them don't. And that ultimately is down to recruitment, isn't it?
Agreed. And I think a director of football is massively needed at Manchester United. You look at all the great clubs, like Zac just said, the likes of Liverpool, the likes of Man City. Tottenham even have our own director of football at the moment with Paratici. It's surprising how much it changes your fortunes because since someone like Paratici, this is talking from experience as Tottenham fans, because I know City and Liverpool have fantastic recruitment, I'm not denying that, but in terms of personal experience, when the way Tottenham were before Paratici, we were signing pretty shocking players, the likes of Ndombele, like Paratici.
And for big money as well, wasn't it?
Exactly. Big money because he showed a bit of talent. Never really looked into mentality, never really looked into how he fit into our system. We're just signing him because he had a great ability. And I think Paratici comes in and he's actually brought up some good deals, the likes of Sarr, the likes of Udogie. There's fantastic players that he's brought in, that we've brought in under Paratici, and it's made a world of difference. So if United can bring in the right man, I've seen the link to the likes of Paul Mitchell, who is actually known at Tottenham at the moment. I know him quite well. Not personally, but I know him as in terms of a director of football. I know
give him a call and tell him to stay well away of United. Stay well clear.
I'd much rather him stay away from United, but he's been at Monaco in the past as well. I remember actually when we appointed him, they've been linked with the likes of Ashworth as well, who's at Newcastle. He's the head of recruitment at Newcastle United, and again, that would be. I'm pretty sure they're not actually too far for actually signing him. Actually, I don't think they're too far because I highly doubt he's going to reject Manchester United because although Newcastle have got potential of going to beat up Manchester United, and obviously as we see Newcastle's FFP issues, they're not going to get there in a hurry. It's going to be quite some time before they get to the top, like the Champions League football. So I would be very surprised if he turned that down. So if they do bring in an Ashworth, I mean, listen, it's even if he doesn't sign the best players, at least there's someone there to sort of take charge of the recruitment, and you're not relying on someone like Erik ten Hag to sign players, because we've seen how shocking the signings that they've been under Ten Hag, because Ten Hag will bring in someone, like we said earlier, that he'll bring in someone that he'll think, like an Anthony, who he thinks will be good, but it doesn't turn out like that, and you need a specialist there.
You need a second opinion, don't you?
Exactly, yeah. You can't just have Ten Hag constantly saying he wants this, and he gets it. Like the fact that
United, whilst trying to manage his team and
exactly. It's just like he doesn't do enough research into the fact that he just doesn't do enough research into signing players. That's just what managers do. The only time I've probably seen something like that is someone like Alex Ferguson, where he might look at someone and think, I want to buy him, because that's the authority he had, and you could get away with it back then.
Yeah.
Like we were saying earlier, you could bring in players because of their quality, but now it's got to be right for the system. It's got to be right mentally. And I think just bringing in, even no matter who it is, as long as it's not an absolute stinker, just bringing in a director of football in the first place is already a bonus for Manchester United. It's already a step forward because they don't even have that in place.
No,
so you can't argue with that being a great appointment. You have to bring in a director of football.
And yes, many United fans crave owners who have a lot of money and a lot of wealth. But that's no good if you don't sign the right players. A recruitment team is absolutely pivotal. Look at City, they have a lot of money, but if they didn't have the right recruitment team in place, would they sign the right players? Okay. Chelsea have a lot of money, rich ownership, but look at them, they're all a mess.
We've seen how bad that's turned out.
Exactly. Are they signing the right players?
Who
knows?
You've got Todd Bowley, I don't know, you might as well call him Ted at this point. Todd Bowley, mate, putting himself as head of recruitment when he doesn't even know a single thing about European football.
Even though they have a load of money.
Exactly. We've seen how poorly that's been spent, and you need a sort of a
system
plan put in there. Yeah, you need a system in place. You need a plan put in there, and a director of football would 100% bring that to Manchester United, no matter who that is. Of course, if it's someone like Ashworth or even a Paul Mitchell, fantastic. I know there's actually been talks about them being put together. Apparently, United want both. That'd be fantastic for Manchester United. That'd be great appointments
not
for
the rest
them.
of us, but yeah.
No, of course not. I don't want that to happen, of course, but for Manchester United, appointing both of them would be fantastic because you've got two knowledgeable brains there. You've got two sort of well-known figures in terms of transfers, and the fact that they're having like that dialogue as well as Ten Hag, that'd be fantastic. And the fact that they'll just bring in a director of football in the first place means that they're already on the right track. And Jim Ratcliffe, by doing that, would actually almost become a hero of Manchester United, because I don't think they've had one for quite some time.
They haven't at all. And if they bring in the right recruitment team, like Harvey just mentioned with those two names there, and they eradicate the budget in the summer, for example, I think most United fans, and especially Ten Hag, would trust that those two people there, those two important figures at the club, would find the right players and bring them in. Ten Hag would be able to go, oh, I think I need someone like this. Can you try and find someone like this? And then they'll be able to bring them in at the right price and not splurge stupid money on stupid players and gambles. United have had too many gambles over the years. It's not as if the players out there are performing at a record-breaking, brilliant level. If you look at someone like Anthony, although he was playing well at Ajax, was he really worth 70, 80, 90 million? Was he really that proven? If they had maybe a different sporting director, he might have found someone else who was cheaper than Anthony, for example, who may have sort of still fitted the way Ten Hag wanted to move forward and the way Ten Hag's system wanted to obviously play out.
But it's recently come out that under Ollie, the scouts or the United recruitment team valued Anthony at, I think it's 25 million. So it goes to show you, I mean, now a couple of years later, then they're spending almost 100 million on the guy. So it's genuinely appalling recruitment. So just even like Zac said, at least if you've got someone in there, you've got someone that you can trust that will have a better sort of a better head, a better understanding on transfers than someone like Ten Hag, because Ten Hag, he can't be the guy you rely on to bring in transfers. It's just the fact that he is in the first place. The fact that we're talking about this is actually mind blowing. Because
shocking for a club of that size.
Exactly. As bad as United have been, and that you can criticise them on multiple places, you'd think that they'd at least have someone in place for head of recruitment. But no, they're asking the manager. They're going up to the manager and saying, "Who do you want this summer?" or "Who do you want this window?" Like that's genuinely mind blowing. Like, of course, managers have to have sort of a say on a transfer. Yeah. Of course they do. You can't just sign a player without the manager knowing. I know at PSG, for example, when Poch was there, they just signed players like Donnarumma and Ramos. They didn't even really tell Poch. Same with Messi. They just didn't tell him. And I know these players are good, but they might not be good for a system. I know it's like, apart from someone like Messi, who can obviously is fantastic, but the likes of Donnarumma, the likes of Ramos, Poch, I don't know if he really wanted them. Wijnaldum as well. Yeah, exactly. A good point there. These players, Poch might not want them because they don't suit his system. So the fact that you're bringing them in without him knowing, that's stupid, because, listen, you shouldn't...
Because they're household names, isn't it?
Exactly. The manager is, at the end of the day, as well, the manager is sort of one of the heads of the table, if that makes sense. He's one of the main people.
Well, he is technically.
Yeah.
Once the budget gets allocated, although the sporting directors are allowed to sign players, it has to pass through the manager.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at, really. Like, the manager is absolutely crucial when it comes to signing a player, and you can't sign him without him knowing. But then you can't go to the manager and say, "Who do you want this window? We're going to ask you who you want this window." Like, he just doesn't.
He can give suggestions,
of course, suggestions, of course, yeah.
But then the suggestion should lead on to the recruitment team then looking for a player along the similar lines,
or similar lines, either a cheaper option or looking into that player that he might want and looking if it truly is the right profile.
Does he have a bad injury history they don't know about? Is he a bad trainer?
Exactly.
Has he had problems with training in terms of not even just actually training bad in terms of not committing himself? Has he had problems with actually staying fit for training and
it's being a regular fit? It's ridiculous that we're talking about. It's like these are things that Ten Hag just cannot do. He's a manager. Yeah. These are things he cannot do. So it's not. Listen, as bad as the signings have been, and I know people put this at Ten Hag, they'll be like, he signed shocking players, he should get the sack. But as bad as he's been,
it'll be the same with the next manager.
Exactly, it is the same with the next manager. But if you're asking the manager who he wants, then he's gonna say. And if you're purely going off your manager's word, then it's just stupid, because I feel like if you went off just Klopp's word, or if you went off just Pep's word, or if you went off just Emery's word,
probably wouldn't have won the same things that they did.
They wouldn't. I mean, you could be talking about these, like, you could question Klopp about his position. I'm not saying you like in terms of him being sacked, but you could question him in terms of if you just constantly.
If he signed Julian Brandt over Mo Salah, would have Liverpool maybe won a Premier League title?
Exactly, and then that's when you question Klopp is if he's the right guy, or he signed that player, he's bad. So these are all things that you got to think deep into. Like, you can't just think, "Oh, Ten Hag signed that guy, sack him." Like, you've got to think deep into these things. And if a recruitment team is put in place, I feel like a lot of the responsibility is left on them and not on Ten Hag. And then that's when you can see Ten Hag flourish at Manchester United. And before we wrap up, guys, please be sure to hit the like button. It really does help us out. And before you go, comment down below your main issue that Jim Ratcliffe needs to solve at Manchester United, because there is a bundle of them out there. But what is a main issue that Jim Ratcliffe needs to solve at Manchester United? Anyway, thanks for watching the video, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.